Hello, Sonicstate here, Gaz Williams for Sonicstate at the Trinity in Bristol with the legend that is Thorsten Quaeschning from Tangerine Dream.
Hey there, nice to be here.
At the moment then, you are 13, 14 dates into a UK tour?
Yeah, 16.
16, right.
Yeah, we have 4 to go, 12 done or 13 done, 1 in Germany. We have a small warm-up gig and in a small venue. But yeah, we did everything from, we started in Ireland, so we play Bath, Belfast, Dublin, then go to Scotland, Glasgow, Edinburgh, and Manchester, Birmingham, Leeds yesterday. But Manchester, it's a lot of
I remember.
Yeah.
But now this tour sadly has been something that's been postponed because of the all the COVID era. So it must be really nice to finally be out on the road.
Sounds a little bit too right of the nose, but sometimes on stage I said it's goodbye. So we were sitting 2 years in the studio waiting for moments like this.
Right.
Because different energy, but on the other hand was a strange feeling to have 2 years for studio work as well. So you can concentrate on the album and without interruptions about picking things up, moving to a festival or something.
Right.
Everything
gets to stay.
There's a straight focus.
So there's a bunch of questions I'd like to ask about Tangerine Dream and the kind of legacy. Obviously, a huge legacy, and then since the sad loss of Edgar in 2015. Right. So then you then became, I guess, the leader of the band, or would that be fair to say?
Yeah. The good thing is, it was never my decision. So Edgar made plans for every scenario, for every could-be thing, and so probably the worst thing about being German, you're taking quests from others and like orders, and so it was my kind of. I started 2003 there, and it's for me a long time. I was very young, and I learned everything about electronic music from Edgar himself, because I was more from classical music. Then I had a huge rock and gothic rock phase in the 90s, for sure. Sorry.
Essential.
And so I never programmed a sequencer before I met Edgar.
Oh wow!
So I used Cubase and all stuff, but no step sequencing. So I learned the idea of step sequencing. There are more rules than you probably would expect, and in scales, in terms, in numbers of steps, and which note should be different than the others, and
So this is really being totally schooled in Berlin school,
absolutely,
I suppose, isn't it? So I mean, obviously, enormous responsibility to carry the mantle of. Because I suppose you've been with them for quite a number of years.
So we were living together 12 years. So I spent more than a half year per year for 12 years in this home in near Vienna. And so so it's a huge legacy for sure. And you can't please everyone. But you couldn't at any time. So I think one of my favorite bands said that they like or love Tangerine Dream until the sequences came in, because Sight and Atom are their favorite albums.
Right.
And then you had people who love the 70s, maybe dislikes the synth poppy melodies from the 80s. So I started in 2003, 2005, where Edgar was doing the Dante trilogy with vocals. So probably I started in a phase where also everyone said this is not Tangerine Dream anymore, so I'm used to to be honest.
Okay, interesting point. Because I mean, in a way, to define what is Tangerine Dream, what are the things, when you make, so with Ram, for instance, what were the elements that you needed to incorporate to make it Tangerine Dream rather than maybe a solo or collaborative?
Yeah, absolutely.
What are the kind of the elements that are essential?
Following the roots of Edgar, and there was the idea to return to kind of sequencer-driven music in 2014. So he skipped the guitar player, the regular playing guitar player, the saxophone, flute player, and percussionist, came back to the kind of roots, the sequencer movements of the 70s, the chord structures of the 80s with contemporary sound design, and with kind of rules that everyone involved has to be kind of a piece of an orchestra. So everyone has a rule inside a track or a piece of music.
Okay, well actually that I did actually have that question in terms of with the other musicians who are playing, how do you decide whose role is what? In a traditional band, I play bass in a band, so my job is never bass. So, but how do you decide who does what? How does that work?
So I think Paul is very good in very percussive playing and very staccato-esque playing. I'm fast soloing, doing most of the sequence stuff, doing the pads. Hoshiko can do mellotron sounds as well because she uses the electronic harmonics. It's called M-tape, something like this.
M-tron?
Oh no, the guitar pedal, and it works
okay.
unbelievably good with the violin because you have a more stable sound. So most of the mellotron choirs are played by Hoshiko because the violin is in fifths. You can easily play chords, and so I mostly play flutes, and she's playing the choir.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so and sometimes we are just one solo by Paul, one by me, and that's fine. And he's using the Uno, so all brassy sounds are more on his side. I'm using Moog solos. This is for soloing and bass, mellotron, and this is mostly for pads and lead sounds and bell sounds. I did many samples for it, so I did even some preset banks on it, and the original one, also on this one. And so I use sometimes my program sounds, and for pads and lead sounds like E, White Eagle Bell, for example. Okay.
So I mean, for when you're performing live, then I mean, what percentage of how live is it? I mean, how much do you rely on? Do you use backing tracks at all?
Yeah, sometimes with drums, and sometimes pads, and more the kind of the DX7 sounds. But at the end of every show, we have half an hour, sometimes 1.5 hours till the curfew, total free. So we are all synced together, agree on a root note and best way, and on a shared tempo, and then just play. So I have a thing called ERM multi-club with 4 strings. So before, since a few years before, we had to stop everything, and of course now the pad play part. Now I can stop single strings, and this, the good thing about it is you can move the clock into the future because it starts after 2 bars. So you can adjust the milliseconds for laptop latencies. Because the problem is we don't have a normal click, so everything is doing MIDI sequencing for some for the chord structures, we can later, and doing the click. And so that the click is on time, I have to do about 50 milliseconds back, and every string has a latency, and you can even shuffle the MIDI clock.
Wow!
So I think that sometimes when people producing music and everyone is shuffling the 808 or 909, but 3% 5/7, something like this, but playing very straight nail sequences on it. So we can shuffle the clock of the sequences as well.
Nice. Yeah, give a little bit of groove in there. Yeah. So that, I mean, improvisation has been a really integral part of Tangerine Dream's history. So that's quite an important element then to make sure that you always bring that into life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So I'm more fan of the term ringtone composing because it's not about doing muscle memory things like in jazz. We have rules for this as well. So I think it's ringtone composition. Yeah. And works. Yeah. So for example, today is we agreed on 93 BPM is start and D minor. Okay. And then we move on. Somewhere.
And that will be different every night then? You'll choose a different...
Yes, fantastic. Sometimes it's responsible of the echo of the horn. Oh. That you can... sometimes of the ceiling, that you can do the pumping thing with frequencies and air moving from speakers.
Oh wow, that's amazing. I love that. Yeah. So I noticed yesterday Grand Theft Auto came out again, released again, version 5. One of the biggest selling, not just computer games, but themes. One of the biggest selling themes of all time. And of course, with the soundtrack.
Which is 35 hours. 35 hours. More than around 2 years. So, and they are not definitely mixes because the game itself is mixing the audio. So you have some stems working around and some, if you move from city center, for example, the harbor, it's all the same tempo, but if you go to the harbor, some shakers came in, which are not present in the city center. So if you're moving around the city, the stems and submixes are arranged differently with every step.
Dynamic soundtrack.
Yeah.
Wow. So I mean, so it must be quite exciting actually that this game, which was released initially in 2013, you know, is now the latest version, obviously for the latest generations of consoles of 4K, you know, all this kind of stuff. But that's really great in terms of the giving all that work that you've done. Another life.
I think even younger people than our usual audience. So even if most of them even not recognizing that's Tangerine Dream, because I think the name appears twice, the first second or first half a minute and at the end. And
the lineup is a slightly newer lineup now. We've got a new member.
It's Paul Frick from a German band called Paul Frick. They're quite successful and big in Germany, I think all over the world. And Hoshiko is with us since 2011.
Right. Yeah. So and then Ulrich Strauss, he was part of the band.
Yeah. He's now concentrating on solo stuff.
Okay. So Ram, then, how do you feel that album is? What would you feel that album brings then to the legacy?
I think it has a slightly different approach. It's more space between the notes, and some tracks are 18 minutes, 19, and I think there's a normal usual sequences, but a little bit different. We use some of Edgar melodies, so we have lots of artists from Edgar. So we, like in Quantum Gate, we use Edgar as part of the composition as well. So, but the good thing now there's Melodyne and Polyphonic, the new version. So it's much easier to convert audio material on existing compositions. So you can change even the polyphonic melodies much easier, the key and the tempo than before.
So when you start a new composition then, do you typically start a composition knowing roughly where you're going, or do you go in there more open and let the development take you to the conclusion?
It's mixed. Sometimes one of us came with a USB stick with some chords, or Hoshiko came with a kind of a loop thing of violin. Sometimes you're doing the session, not recording the whole session, but kind of freezing the moment where we had the feeling that something special happened, then record 32 tracks, 60 and 64, whatever, and move on from that point in the studio environment. So during the session, everything can happen. So everything gets slightly detuned after sometimes, and you have no second chance to play it. If you then move to a studio environment, where in kind of a controlled environment, and the mixture was fine. So sometimes it was an idea of chord structure or melody, sometimes it was just us playing kind of a session and then freezing a moment. And sometimes even this moment, which triggers things after it, were deleted at the end of, and that doesn't make it to the final mix. But it was fine, so everything is interacting.
Right. Yeah. So then I guess when you get to, well, this is going to come to my next question, but how do you know when something is finished? Is that intuition? Is that experience? Or how do you, when you've kind of developed something and you kind of go, it's there?
So mostly it's the deadline.
The deadline, right.
So you could editing for years, or sometimes decades, and you will find something 5 years up, for sure.
I call it the realm of infinite adjustability.
Yeah.
You know.
So
the deadline works as a way to kind of.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay.
If it's not too stressy, it's fine. So, but we recorded one vocoder on the last day.
Oh wow!
On the track called "What You Should Know About Endings."
Okay.
It was a fine vocoder, and something was missing, and just without words, just vocalization while the thing worked.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Nice. So after the UK tour is over, where next? Tangerine Dream. The tour continues.
Yes, there's a Scandinavian leg. There's in Belgium, and the Netherlands. We play some concerts in Southern Europe and Germany. So it's continues, and hopefully a bigger tour. So Northern Europe next year, and coming back hopefully maybe fall 23 or spring 2014.
That's important. Thank you ever so much for taking time to talk to us.
Yes, sure.
Can't wait for the concert.
Yeah, thank you very much.